Sure. Marc Morano?
I think he's online. I think the two you're calling are online.
Yes.
Introduce yourself for the record and make your comments known, please.
Hi, I'm Marc Morano, the publisher of CFAX Climate Depot. I'm also the author of a book on the Green New Deal and climate change, and I've attended all the UN climate, 21 of the last 23 UN climate summits. So I make it my business. I'm a policy student of energy policy and climate policy and net zero. And I just wanted to urge the passing of HB 3247 because it's a very critical bill. And I think if you look at it, it's an absolute necessity for a state, particularly like Oregon, trying to go through an energy transition right now. And you have a provision in the law that for mandating that you replace power that you take offline. And I think one of the things we can look to is Europe for this example. Europe took a lot of promises about renewable energy, solar and wind, and they canceled a lot of fossil fuel projects. In one famous case in England, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson actually was talking about putting cement over the fracking wells in the UK to show their commitment to the energy transition and to net zero. Well, they ended up not putting cement over it, but they did end up moving away from the natural gas fracking. And so what ends up happening is most of Europe was caught because they didn't have a law like this to protect themselves. They ended up pulling off reliable, strong energy with the promise that other energy was going to just swoop in and replace it. And the reality hit them, particularly when Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm bringing up the European history because this is the lesson that I think Oregon needs to take. This bill would protect you and follow their lessons. In fact, right now, Germany, because they've been in such a mess, they just had their climate prime minister tossed out of office. And the replacement is a man who openly mocked the net zero agenda. The German electorate, which was considered the most committed to the net zero climate agenda, energy transition, completely reversed themselves. Over 50% of the vote went to opponents of that because they took that leap of faith and shut down reliable power on the promise that something would replace it either immediately or down the road, and that promise never materialized. So Oregon can protect themselves with this bill. I urge you to pass it. And it just, especially if you're looking at a sort of a rash of decommissioning hydroelectric dams across the state, you got to be very careful when you do that. This bill will protect you. Look to Europe. And I just want to say, in final, Reuters has come out and admitted, Reuters news agency, corporate mainstream media, just to give a context, this is their quote from Reuters, February 27th, the pursuit of net zero carbon emissions has been a resounding failure despite trillions of dollars spent on renewable energy. Fossil fuels still account for 80% of the world's primary energy. May not directly apply to Oregon on that point, but the point is you can't take the promises that some other source of energy will just swoop in and replace it. You've got to investigate. You've got to have by law protecting your consumers, your businesses, and your state, and frankly, your political careers. This job is your political protection, or you'll end up like the German politicians who took these leaps of faith and just decommissioned and shut down reliable energy, proven energy for decades on the hope and on the promises that they would be replaced by this new energy. So I don't want to go on, but I urge you to support HB 3247 to protect Oregonians and businesses and protect your state from future irrational energy decisions that are not based on the reality of history. So with that, I urge you to support HB 3247, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.